The iPad Pro is probably one of the best things I bought in regards to a utility that I can use, right? Like the other examples in the same category in my mind are books, textbooks, software, things that help me get things done. I just want to talk about why I think it has so much utility, and I'm completely aware of the potential accusations of being an Apple fanboy, and whatever. Now, what is it that gives it good utility? I'll show you how I have it. So it's actually the 12.5 inch model, right? I have it in a standard Apple skin because they're the nicest and thinnest ones that you can get. Then I have the smart keyboard, folds out. It's a keyboard. There's a certain outfit that I think you need for an iPad Pro to be useful for an engineering degree. You need a good case on it so that it doesn't get damaged, okay? I think that's a necessity. I don't think that's optional anymore. Just with the cost of screen fracture repairs and stuff like that, and the annoyingness of taking out something like an iPad out of a case, I think having a case on it, just like you would with a phone, you need to have something on the back of this thing in order to just protect your asset, right? I mean, you don't really need to have the smart keyboard. I would say that I feel like I haven't gotten the extreme value out of the cost of that thing, but a smart cover from Apple is quite nice as well. I think they're like $80 Australian, whereas the keyboard is about $200 Australian. So you can still have that sort of like light up effect when you open the thing, but not have to pay so much for the keyboard component. But if you are a typer and you do type a lot, the typing experience is quite nice. It's just that I personally prefer handwriting a lot more than typing. You also need the pencil, right? The way in which this transmits to an iPad Pro, and the thing that sets apart an iPad Pro from a regular iPad is the fact that the iPad can actually tell when, like, how hard you're pushing on the screen and at what angle you're pushing on the screen, and that's what recreates the handwriting and recreates your handwriting in such a way that it looks realistic on the screen. With this, I think there also comes a potential advantage and a bit of functionality from the fact that this can be your notebook, this can be your textbook. I have a lot of textbooks on here in PDF form that I use a lot. With that, you have combined essentially all the paper that would have been in your bag into one device, and something that weighs about as much as maybe 2 A4 books. This one's 2 thick A4 books, I would say, maybe 3 regular sized A4 notebooks, and it's a bit thinner, so you could probably have a smaller bag or something like that. Though I don't think that's a major advantage. The other thing is it can also be your computer, right? This browses the web. You can store files on here now with the new file exploring app that connects to iCloud and all that sort of stuff. So it has that ability to save and access files and functions more towards a computer than usual. I would say though, if you are doing something like software engineering, an iPad Pro is probably not for you, seeing as you're probably going to spend most of your time typing stuff. Everything is within a certain domain on an iPad that's not like in a computer. A computer is a very free machine, but that still doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have. It just means that it's different, and it's probably not what you want if you're intending to write software all the time. The other thing that's essential utility, so I said it was the iPad itself. Obviously you need an iPad, not just an iPad actually, an iPad Pro. You need the pencil, you need a case of some sort, and you also need a piece of software called Notability. Notability is a great application that costs about, I think it's 15 Australian dollars on the App Store, and what it does is it essentially is just a note-taking app, but it has a lot of features, and a lot of features that are incredibly useful, in that you can write on Notability, and from that you can copy what you've just drawn, a vector drawn piece of handwriting, and paste it again if you wanted to paste it somewhere else. This is really handy for like circuit diagrams personally. It's also really good for equations that are like complicated and have a lot of variables and exponents and subscripts. There's also the potential for like just how nice the highlighting is on it as well. Like if you compare the highlighting in the Notability app with the highlighting in the Ibooks app, which I use for my textbooks, is trash. Well, the iBooks one is trash. The Notability is just really nice, not too in your face, really subtle, and beyond that, the main reason that it's so useful is actually that it can sync with Google Drive, right? So imagine you are writing up a report for one of your, like a physics class or something, and then you want to submit that. You don't have to go then from your handwritten notes and scan them in, or go from your handwritten notes and create equation typeset stuff in LaTeX or Microsoft Word. You can just straight away like use this as a submission, right? You can compile this with other parts of PDFs and then send that for submission. This is just a really handy thing to be able to do. To also be able to move pages, the order of pages around is a really handy skill to have as well with this software. Beyond that, you can also file things onto certain folders, and in folders you can have certain subjects as well. So it becomes very much like a massive digital binder that has all your stuff in it. I archive everything after I finish the subject, and I just have one big archive folder full of all my subject material. And I open that up every now and then and just go in and look for something that I know I did a while ago on my iPad, a year ago, a year and a half ago, and open it up, and it's there. It's accessible at all times, and it's also quick. Like when you write it and you exit that note, it immediately starts to sync with the Google Drive. It deletes and replaces the PDF that was on Google Drive, and then you're immediately able to view it because of the magic of Google Drive and Notability. The way in which I personally use this thing, right? So what I do is I usually have my note-taking app, Notability, open, and I'll be writing some stuff, and then I'll want to refer back to my text, and I'll switch windows. I'll open up the PDF viewer, usually at such a big scale on the screen that I can't see my notes anymore, or I just completely open the iBook stuff. And I've been doing this technique called read, write, think, or read, think, write, which means that essentially I'm reading the text and thinking about it, exiting it, not being able to visually see it right there and then writing what I can remember, what I understand, the idea, the formula, what it is that I'm actually attempting to learn, and then going back and just sort of checking if I got it right, correcting anything, thinking essentially whilst I'm doing, rather than I have a real propensity to open the textbook, look at the textbook, look at my notes, and I'll start with the thinking and I'll be like, oh, okay, and I read this thing, and then what ends up happening is that I end up copying out the notes in the textbook. Multitasking with some other things, right? So that I've talked a bit about my textbook viewing app. I use Ibooks mainly just because it syncs across a few different devices and sort of keeps my textbooks in a synchronized, classified way that I can know where they are. And once you get past second year, you get to have quite a few of them that have just sort of accumulated, some that you don't use and some that you use a lot. The other apps that I use in multitasking are the Reminders app. It's not because it's an amazing app, it is very beautiful and I like it. I do have some complaints, but the fact that it syncs onto my watch and my phone makes it invaluable. I can write my groceries on my iPad and it ends up on my watch. And I can write something that's in my mind and I know I need to remember, but I will forget while I'm studying, and I just quickly open up the Reminders app, jot it down, and it's locked away at a place where I can review it later. It's sort of just like a catch-all net for the things going through my brain that need to be addressed, essentially. And having that accessibility from your phone to your iPad to the watch, there's some real benefits to that. When you upload these documents to Google Drive, well, when Notability does it for you, you can share that folder with someone, which then means that if you wanted to have a collaborative area where people could view your notes as you do them, you wanted to share a document as you progress through it, you wrote something on in a group meeting, like minutes or something on the handwritten, you can go to the Google Drive, share the link with people, and they can access that handwritten thing really, really easily with no need for you to go through the whole uploading process. It's just a sharing process, so that's really handy too. You have all the functionality of Google Drive's ability to share. which I really make use of quite frequently. Producing notes is a very, very big part of my study experience at university, and having something that does it well is such a relief in that I don't have to think about having to buy pens or having to buy books every new semester. I just have to clean out my Notability library, put in new subjects, make new dividers, and bang, it's done. That said, there are some downsides to the iPad Pro. You're probably skeptical about that. I would have come across as a fanboy for the entire video. Anyway, so some drawbacks of the iPad Pro are that it costs a lot of money. Base model, currently 979 Australian dollars in the Apple Store just for the iPad. It's ridiculous. That's just a lot of money for a student. But when you compare it to the fact that a lot of people are buying MacBooks anyway, that cost, anywhere around $1,300, it kind of begins to become reasonable in that manner when you kind of think of it as a potential all-in-one. You do also need the $149 Apple Pencil in Australian dollars. That adds up really quickly when you put on the case and a cover for it, which can bring you up another $150, $200, right, for a decent case, for an Apple branded case, I guess is the reality. Beyond that, there's some other things in that although the pencil charges up really quickly, I think the claim is like 15 seconds equals 15 minutes of writing. I am caught out so many times with 0% on this thing, mainly just because I'm lazy and don't charge it on a regular basis. I always have to get it out of my bag after the weekend, and I think, yep, here we go. I'm just going to write some notes, and then I have another 5 minutes before I can, get down to business. Just because I have to plug it in and charge it up. But it does last quite a long while. But that's beside the point. What I'm really trying to say is you have to plan to charge these things. Unlike notebooks or paper, you just rock up and it's there, and you can just do what you want with it. The kinesthetic feel of an iPad is very, very different to paper. The glass is not the same, and on a hot day it can get a little sticky, to be honest with you. So working with it in an air-conditioned environment is probably the most common place you're going to work with it, but I totally understand the complaints about the fingerprints and all over the surface, and the stickiness of your arm to the glass as you're writing and stuff if you're quite hot. So something to worth consider if you're in Australia. The smart keyboard, I will just say that the angle at which it sits is kind of awkward if you're laying down. It gets a little awkward in that it's not the right angle. You always want it to tilt it a little up. But see how there's this gap here? Yeah, you can't do that, right? So, bottom line, don't use it laying down. Another thing worth noting is that this thing is damn heavy. Sizable. It's don't sit there and hold it and watch a video, because your wrists start to hurt, and weight sort of gives it makes it feel higher quality. You don't hear about people saying, oh, it's got a good weight to it. I would say it's got a good weight to it and a little more. There's a bit of glass here and there's some electronics beneath it. What are you going to do? That pretty much brings me to the end of just a quick talk about how I use this thing and the quick pros and cons. Yeah.